The Rise and Fall of Gurara Capital. Season 1. Episode 5. The Crumbling Castle.
The cracks in Gurara Capital started to show sooner than anyone had expected. It began with a project that was supposed to be a straightforward success. It was one of the company's biggest initiatives, a partnership with a major client that would have brought in a significant amount of revenue. Umar had been working on the project for months before he was let go. He had put in the late hours, had analysed every detail, every risk, and now, without him, things were beginning to fall apart. I am Sarah Mark, and I had come back from Lagos with big ideas, confident that I could bring about the change Gurara Capital needed. But now, as I sat in my office, staring at the report in front of me, I could feel my confidence slipping away. The numbers weren't adding up, the projections were all wrong, and the client was growing increasingly unhappy. I had tried to delegate the work Umar used to handle, but no one seemed to have the same understanding, the same grasp of the details that he had. I rubbed my temples, trying to push back the growing sense of panic. I had trusted Ahmed to take on more responsibilities to help keep things on track. He had assured me that he could handle it, that he knew what he was doing. But now, as I looked at the latest updates, it was clear that Ahmed was in over his head. He had made mistakes, big mistakes, the kind of mistakes that could cost us the client, the kind of mistakes that could damage the company's reputation. I called Ahmed into my office, trying to keep my frustration in check. He walked in, his usual confident smile plastered on his face, but I could see the tension in his eyes. Ahmed, we need to talk about the project. These numbers are all wrong. The client is threatening to pull out, and I need to understand what happened. Ahmed's smile faltered, and he shifted uncomfortably. I've been doing my best, Miss Mark. There's just been a lot to manage, and I think maybe there were some miscommunications, but I'm sure we can fix it. Miscommunications? Ahmed, this isn't just a small mistake. This is a major issue, and it's affecting our relationship with one of our biggest clients. We can't afford to have these kinds of problems. Ahmed nodded, his expression growing more serious. I understand, Miss Mark. I'll work on it right away. I'll make sure everything is sorted out. But as the days went on, things only got worse. The client grew more frustrated, and no matter what Ahmed tried, it seemed like he couldn't fix the problems. He was in over his head, and it was becoming increasingly clear that he didn't have the skills or the knowledge to handle the project. I tried to step in, to take control, but it was like trying to put out a fire that had already spread too far. The tension in the office was palpable. People whispered in the hallways, their eyes darting towards my office and then away again. I could feel their unease, their growing sense of uncertainty. It was as if the entire company was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. The board meeting that week was one of the worst I had ever experienced. I sat at the long table, surrounded by the members of the board, their faces grim as they looked over the reports in front of them. The project was failing, and everyone knew it. The numbers were bad, the client was unhappy, and the blame was starting to fall squarely on my shoulders. Miss Mark, one of the board members said, this project was supposed to be a major success for Gurara Capital. We were counting on it, and now it looks like we're on the verge of losing the client altogether. What happened? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. We've had some challenges, but we're working to address them. I'm confident that we can get things back on track. The board member shook his head. We need more than just confidence, Miss Mark. We need results, and right now it doesn't look like we're going to get them. I nodded. I knew he was right. Things were falling apart, and I didn't know how to fix them. As the meeting continued, I couldn't help but think about Umar, about how things had been different when he was here. He had always been the one to catch the problems before they became crises, the one to keep everything running smoothly. Without him, it felt like the foundation of the company was crumbling beneath us. Later that day, as I walked through the office, I overheard a conversation that stopped me in my tracks. Two of the employees were talking by the break room, their voices low, but I could hear the frustration in their tones. I don't understand why they let Umar go, one of them said, shaking his head. Things were so much better when he was here. He knew what he was doing. Now everything's a mess. The other employee nodded. I know. Ahmed doesn't have a clue. And Sarah, she's trying, but it's not the same. Umar was the one holding everything together, and now it's all falling apart. I felt a pang of guilt, a sinking feeling in my stomach. I had been so sure that I was making the right decisions, that I knew what was best for the company. But now, as I listened to my employees, I realized that I had made a terrible mistake. I had underestimated Umar's value, had dismissed him because he wasn't flashy, because he didn't draw attention to himself, but he had been the backbone of Gurara Capital, and without him, we were falling apart. That evening, as I sat in my office, staring at the reports in front of me, I felt a sense of helplessness that I had never felt before. I had come to Gurara Capital with big ideas, with plans to make things better, but Now it felt like everything I touched was turning to dust. I had let my pride get in the way, had refused to see the value in someone who didn't fit my idea of what a successful employee should be. I knew I needed to make things right, but I didn't know how. Umar was gone, and I didn't even know where he was, or if he would be willing to come back. But I knew one thing for certain: if I didn't find a way to fix this, Gurara Capital was in danger of collapsing completely. The next morning, I called Mr. Okoro into my office. He had been with the company for years, had known Umar well, and I needed his help. "Mr. Okoro, I think I made a mistake. Letting Umar go, it was the wrong decision. I need your help to find him, to bring him back. I don't know if he'll be willing, but we have to try." Mr. Okoro looked at me, his expression softening. He nodded slowly. "I've known Umar for a long time, Miss Mark. He's a good man, and he cared about this company. I'll do what I can to reach out to him." As he left the office, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. I had made mistakes, big mistakes, but maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to make things right. I had learned a hard lesson. Every person has value, even if it's not always immediately obvious. And without Umar, Gurara Capital was nothing more than a crumbling castle, a hollow shell of what it had once been. Now, it was up to me to try and rebuild, to try and bring back the foundation that had held us together. I just hoped that it wasn't too late.